Welcome to Eerie Shadow.
I never intended to go that deep. The trail I followed wasn't on any of my maps. It peeled away from the main path like a secret the forest didn't want to share, winding beneath old pine limbs, heavy with moss. There were no footprints, no discarded granola wrappers or fire pits. Just quiet. Call me a lie. I hike alone and I take pictures of places people forget. Sometimes they get published. Most times they don't. And that's fine. I came out here to this forgotten slice of the Pacific Northwest for silence. Or maybe something else I didn't want to name. The truth is, I've always been running from a sound. A humming. It started when I was a kid, during a camping trip with my family in Oregon. My sister June disappeared that night. One second we were roasting marshmallows, the next she was gone. No blood, no struggle, just absence. I remember one thing, a soft, wordless hum just before she vanished. Like someone trying to soothe her, like someone trying to lure her. I've spent my life avoiding that sound. Until this forest. Until now. Day 1, I pitched my tent at dusk. The clearing I found felt too perfect. The ground was flat, sheltered, dry. Almost like it had been waiting. I laid down a perimeter with salt and snapped branches, a habit I picked up from a forum full of occult-obsessed backpackers. A joke, mostly, but I still did it, because you never know. That night the forest was too quiet. Not peaceful, empty. The crickets stopped. The wind held its breath. Around 2 a.m. I heard it, faint, melancholic. A woman humming. I froze in my sleeping bag, heart hammering. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far. I grabbed my recorder, whispered, "Night 1, something's out there." Female voice. Not an animal, it's humming. No footsteps, just that haunting tune, echoing like it was bouncing between trees. Day 2, I hiked out, thinking maybe I could find a source or signs of someone. I found old trail markers swallowed by ivy. Then a ranger station, abandoned and half-collapsed. Dust layered everything. Mice skittered in the walls. There was a radio on the desk, dead. But next to it, a journal, water-damaged but readable. Day 12. Heard her again last night. She knows my name now. I didn't sleep that night. The humming returned, closer. The tune bent strangely around my name. Lai. I ran the recording back in the morning. There was a second voice, lower, identical to mine, whispering, "Don't turn around." But I never said that. Day 3, my salt perimeter was gone. In its place were small rocks, arranged in perfect concentric circles. I didn't make those, and I damn sure didn't carve eyes into the nearby tree trunks. That night, the humming started earlier. When I shone my flashlight, the beam caught only fog, until it didn't. Just beyond the reach of light, a silhouette. A woman. Long hair. Still as death, I blinked. She was gone. My voice notes were corrupted in the morning. Glitched, looping. Follow it, follow it, follow it. Day 4, I packed. Tried to leave. The trail was different. Forks I never saw before. Familiar landmarks missing. The forest turned in on itself like a maze that didn't want to let me go. Something tugged on my backpack as I walked, hard enough to stagger me. I spun around. No one. That night, I tasted blood in my mouth. Woke to find my tongue bitten nearly through. A faint honeysuckle smell drifted through the tent, sweet and rotted, and the humming. It was right outside. She whispered, "You're so close." Day 5, I snapped. I followed the humming, left everything behind except my recorder and a dim flashlight. The sound danced just ahead, always out of reach. The deeper I went, the stranger the forest became. Trees grew in spirals. Bark pulsed like breathing skin. Moss covered everything, like the forest had forgotten the concept of death. Hours passed, or minutes. Time unraveled. Then I found it, a clearing I hadn't seen on any map. At the center, a moss-covered stone door in the hillside. The humming was louder now, layered with something else, my sister's voice. "Eli, help me." I pressed my hand to the stone. Warm. It pulsed under my palm. The door opened without sound. Inside, darkness. Cold air, and a single item on the ground, a photo, water-stained, old, June and me at the campsite. But my face had been burned away. Gone. I stepped forward and began to hum, at first just to myself. Then another voice joined in my voice. From the shadows, singing harmony, I dropped the recorder, the last thing it captured, found him. He sings now too. Weeks later, someone uploaded a video from the trail. A younger hiker, vlogging their solo trip. They filmed near my last known coordinates. Their voice is playful at first. "Okay, so this is weird. Anyone else hear that creepy song at night out here? It's kind of beautiful." Their video ends mid-sentence. The camera lurches sideways. A glimpse of trees, a long shadow, then black. Rangers found the kids' gear 2 weeks later. No sign of them. Just concentric stone circles around a flattened tent. In the recovered footage, there's a moment, barely visible. Behind the fog, just before the lens glitches, 2 figures stand near a mossy hill. One looks like a woman, the other, he's humming. And if you listen closely, you might recognize the tune. I used to think tinnitus was just some harmless ringing, a static backdrop to life. Just an annoying noise in my ears after loud concerts or long days. But the thing is, it's never just ringing. Not for me. Not anymore. My name is James, and I live in an apartment so soundproofed that the neighbors complain about the silence. For me, it's a fortress, a desperate attempt to drown out the constant high-pitched tone that no doctor can fix. At first, I thought it was just my ears slowly dying after the accident. The pyrotechnics explosion backstage at that show 2 years ago tore through the air and shattered more than just glass. It left me with this relentless noise in my head, like a bee trapped inside my skull, buzzing in a loop that never ends. But then, things changed. It started subtle. Beneath the ringing, almost indistinguishable at first, I began hearing faint whispers. Quiet, so quiet that I thought I was imagining it or losing my mind. But the whispers didn't go away. They began to grow louder at night, especially in the dark hours when the world goes quiet and your mind wants to rest. I'd lie awake in my bed, the constant ringing thick in my ears, and then beneath that, I'd hear a voice. At first, it was just a few words, soft, broken phrases. Sometimes a name, sometimes a desperate apology. "I never meant to. Please tell her. Don't forget me." I tried to rationalize it. Maybe my brain was filling in gaps, creating phantom voices from the tinnitus. Maybe I was just lonely, hearing echoes of conversations I'd had or overheard. But then I recorded it. One restless night, I set up my handheld recorder next to my pillow. I didn't expect anything. I was just tired of feeling crazy. The next morning, I pressed play with a shaking hand. The high-pitched tone was there, as always, a brutal background static. But beneath it, clearer than I ever heard live, were voices, whispered, urgent, fragmented. A woman's voice, calm but sad, "James, I'm still here," my breath caught. How did it know my name? I rewound and listened again. There it was, unmistakable. The voice whispered my name. I felt a cold wave crawl up my spine. I wanted to delete the file, erase the recording, and pretend none of this was real. But I couldn't. I had to know. I dove into research, scouring forums about tinnitus, paranormal phenomena, and even audio hauntings. Most dismissed me as crazy. "It's just your brain," they said. "You're creating patterns where none exist." But I wasn't convinced. I started keeping a journal, recording what I heard, the times the voices were strongest, any clues in the words. Names, places, fragments of stories that hinted at tragedies. One phrase repeated often, "Help us," and sometimes, "We're waiting." My friends stopped calling. I missed social events because I was too tired or too afraid to be around noise that could trigger worse episodes. My doctor increased my medication, anti-anxiety drugs, sleeping pills, but nothing dulled the ringing or silenced the whispers. Some nights, the voices overlapped, speaking at once. I'd sit in the dark, clutching my ears, trying to filter them out. It was like trying to listen to a dozen radios tuned to different frequencies, all broadcasting in ghostly echoes. The worst part was the loneliness. Knowing that no one else could hear what I did. No one believed me. I felt trapped in a soundscape only I inhabited. One night, something changed. The voices began to make sense. I caught words, phrases like accident, betrayed, and not ready. They seemed to be trying to tell me something. I started writing everything down, building connections. Names started to emerge, people who had died under strange or tragic circumstances. I pulled up news reports, obituaries. There were patterns. Victims connected by sudden, violent deaths, all local to my city. I began mapping it on my wall, photos, newspaper clippings, sound wave printouts, scribbled notes. It looked insane. Probably was. One night I was working late, headphones on, trying to isolate a phrase. Suddenly, a shadow flickered on my wall, just a dark blur. I snapped my head around, nothing, but the whisper was louder now, a chorus of voices urging me, "Find us. Help us. Don't forget." I felt tears well up. It was too much, too real. I stopped going outside. I stopped sleeping. I became obsessed with listening, recording, decoding. The tinnitus worsened, stabbing like needles. My ears bled once. I began to hear a new voice, calm, reassuring, familiar. It spoke my name, begged forgiveness. And then it told me something I wasn't ready to hear, the voice that spoke my name. It wasn't just any voice. It was my voice. Soft, distant, apologetic. For days I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was a trick of my mind, a symptom of the tinnitus torturing me. But every time I closed my eyes, it whispered, "James, forgive me." The words repeated over and over, like a prayer or a curse. I started to question everything. Was I losing my mind? Was I dead? I went back to the accident. The night when the pyrotechnics exploded, the day my life changed forever. I dug up old news reports and police records, reading them with a morbid curiosity. A lot of details were missing. An investigation had been launched but quietly closed, labeled an accident. There was a photograph of me in the paper, my eyes closed, a thin trail of smoke curling behind me as the blast erupted. I stared at it, feeling a sudden chill. Could it be that the accident wasn't just physical? I isolated every whisper I could find in my recordings. I slowed down the playback, reversed audio, applied filters. And then it hit me. Hidden beneath the noise was a pattern. A sequence of numbers, dates, coordinates, places I'd never heard of. I used an old map and GPS to locate one of the coordinates. It was a place on the outskirts of the city, an abandoned factory. The first time I went there, I felt like I was walking into a nightmare. The air was thick with rust and decay. The wind whispered through broken windows. I held my recorder close, headphones on, trying to catch any of the voices. Suddenly, the tinnitus spiked to a deafening level, drowning out everything else. I had to rip off my headphones and cover my ears. When the ringing faded, the voices were gone. But on the ground, I found something, a small, weathered notebook. Inside, handwritten notes documented a person's slow descent into madness, descriptions of the same voices I was hearing, sketches of sound waves, diagrams of hearing apparatuses. A final entry said, "If you find this, listen carefully. They don't want to be forgotten." We're trapped between the frequencies, waiting for someone who can hear us. After the visit to the factory, the voices became unbearable. They filled every silent moment. I was no longer alone in my apartment. At night, I'd hear footsteps pacing behind me. Whispers would swirl around my head like a cyclone. "James, help us." I became desperate, addicted to the recordings, the only proof I had. One night, in the middle of the relentless buzzing and whispering, I blacked out. When I woke, I was on the floor, sweat soaking my clothes. My ears throbbed with pain, but the voices were silent for the first time in months. I never imagined a simple ticking sound could unravel me. Not the ticking of a clock, not the creak of old floorboards, but the steady, relentless tick of a metronome. It started innocuously enough. I was hunched over my desk, composing a new piece for piano. The evening sun slanted through the window, casting long amber fingers across the scattered sheet music. My old mechanical metronome sat beside the keyboard, its wooden frame scarred, the pendulum swinging with measured precision. Tick, tick, tick. I glanced up as the tempo settled in my mind, the steady pulse guiding my fingers across the keys. The sound was comforting at first, like a heartbeat that synced my own. But as hours turned into days, the ticking began to bleed beyond the metronome. At first, I thought it was just me. Maybe the ticking echoed somewhere in the apartment, bouncing off the walls. But the sound grew louder, persistent, echoing through empty rooms even when the metronome lay silent on the desk. I reached out to silence it, but the ticking never stopped. One night, I awoke in the blackness, the tick-tick-tick cutting through the silence like a razor. It wasn't just in the music room, it was everywhere. The kitchen, the bathroom, even the hallway. I sat up, heart pounding, desperate to locate the source. There was nothing, no metronome, no clock, no ticking device, only that maddening, precise beat, like a countdown, echoing in my ears. I told myself it was stress, the pressure of deadlines, the loneliness of composing in a city where no one really knew me, but the ticking followed me. I smashed the metronome one afternoon. It was on the desk, its wood splintering under my hammer. Pieces flew across the floor. I waited for silence, but the ticking didn't stop. It grew louder, faster. Click, 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 click. a maddening tempo that matched the frantic rhythm of my racing thoughts. The sound clawed at my sanity, pushing me to the edge. I stopped leaving the apartment. I stopped answering calls. I was a prisoner to the sound. Sleep became impossible. The ticking invading dreams, warping reality. Every shadow flickered with the rhythm. The walls seemed to pulse. My heartbeat and the metronome's ticking entwined, inseparable. I became obsessed with the tempo. I tried to slow it, to match it, to fight it. But the faster it grew, the more I lost myself. One night, as the tempo accelerated to a frantic pace, I thought I heard voices hidden in the ticking. Whispers, fragments of forgotten melodies, ghosts of music long lost. "Lucas," a faint voice called. I covered my ears, but it only grew louder. The ticking wasn't just a sound. It was alive. I realized the metronome wasn't just an instrument. It was a trap. A device that counted down to something I couldn't escape. The tempo accelerated until it was a roar in my mind. The room spun. Time fractured. And I was lost in the endless beat. There was a point when I stopped believing the ticking was in the room. I started believing it was in me. It no longer mattered whether I wore earplugs, covered my ears with pillows, or ran the faucet full blast just to drown it out. The beat was always there, beneath it all, a skeletal rhythm etched into my skull. I could feel it in my bones, like the vibration of a subway beneath a city block, subtle but impossible to ignore. I tried everything: white noise machines, EMF detectors, even a self-conducted auditory nerve scan at the clinic downtown. The doctor said I had perfectly normal hearing. "But do you hear a metronome?" I asked him. He smiled politely and said, "Sometimes stress manifests as phantom sound. Musical ear syndrome." I left with a prescription and a business card for a therapist. I never called. One night, I found myself sitting in the dark with nothing but my childhood keyboard in front of me. I hadn't touched it in years, not since my sister, Riley, died. I used to play for her. Little lullabies to help her sleep after the surgeries. She would always ask me to slow down. "Slower, Lucas. I like when it sounds sleepy." My hands hovered over the keys, shaking. I didn't know why I'd pulled it out again, why I kept it under the bed for all these years. Maybe I was chasing something I couldn't name. Some ghost, some guilt. I pressed a single key, middle C. And immediately, the ticking snapped to match its tone. The tempo shifted with it. It was learning me, mimicking my rhythm, or maybe it was leading me. I started hearing it behind doors, behind walls. Every time I walked past the coat closet in the hallway, I felt the sound shift just slightly. Like there was something behind it, measuring my steps. I stood there one night, forehead pressed to the door. The ticking was louder, more distinct. Not just a metronome anymore, but layered. Like fingers tapping, feet shuffling, breath between beats. It wasn't mechanical. It was human. I opened the door and there was nothing, but in the dark I swore I saw movement. Like someone had just stepped out of frame. I became obsessed with catching it, proving it. I dusted off my old tape recorder, one I hadn't used since college. I set it beside my bed and hit record every night. I played it back every morning. The static hiss of silence. Then, just before dawn, the ticking. But not just ticking. Voices, faint and layered beneath the tempo. I slowed the tape and played it backwards, and my skin went cold. A voice, mine, whispering something I didn't remember saying, "You left her there." I threw the recorder across the room. It shattered, but the sound didn't stop. That night, the tempo doubled. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I barely moved from the desk, where I scribbled symbols and time signatures that didn't exist, entire symphonies in tempos only I could hear. But through the fog, a memory clawed its way forward. The night Riley died. It wasn't just the cancer. It wasn't just the machines failing. I remembered the storm, the way the power flickered in the hospital room. I remembered walking out, because I couldn't listen to the beeping machines anymore. I needed silence. I left her there. And when I came back, she was gone. Now I understand. The ticking isn't random, it's hers. It's the sound that filled her hospital room, the rhythm of machines, the beep of her monitors, the tempo of a failing heart. It never stopped. She's still keeping time, waiting for me to finish the lullaby. And the metronome. It wasn't broken. I was. Last night, the ticking stopped. Complete silence. Not even the fridge hum or the city outside, just silence. And I knew what it meant. I sat at the piano, not the childhood one, but my real baby grand, and I played. I played what I used to play for her, the lullaby. Slower than I ever had. And as I did, the metronome returned. Click, 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 only this time. It wasn't alone. I heard her hum, softly, just behind me, slower, Lucas. I like when it sounds sleepy. I didn't cry. I just nodded and kept playing. And when the last note faded into stillness, I stood, turned toward the closet, and stepped inside. The apartment was found empty 2 weeks later. Neighbors complained about a piano playing all night, even though no one was home. There was no sign of Lucas Bennett, just a broken metronome on the floor, still ticking. I don't go near radios anymore, not in my car, not in a store, not even the tinny jingle from someone's phone speaker. The moment I hear static, my chest tightens. I freeze. Because sometimes, even after all these years, I still hear the song, the one that wasn't supposed to exist, the one that played itself. I was never meant to become a DJ. Not really. At 29, I was drifting, a journalism graduate who hated deadlines, a music lover who could barely play the guitar. But after a few odd gigs, I landed a job at 96.3 Untitled FM, one of the oldest radio stations in Hong Kong. Night shift. Midnight to 5 a.m. It wasn't glamorous. The studio was dated, gray panels with nicotine stains, a creaking desk covered in ancient faders, and shelves of dusty vinyls no one touched anymore. The digital playlist handled most of the load, and I just had to cue ads, throw in a few live liners, and babysit the airwaves. Honestly, it was peaceful until the peace broke. My only real coworker during those hours was Michael, the overnight technician. He was in his 40s, kind of gruff, but warm beneath the sarcasm. Balding, always in a jacket no matter how hot it was. Said the studio held a chill that wasn't from the AC. And then there was Jamie. She wasn't technically staff, a journalism intern, barely 22, sharp-tongued and obsessed with paranormal podcasts. She came in to observe, to get a feel for broadcasting. The irony still gets me. She got more than a feel. The weirdness began like a cough in a crowded room, annoying, ignorable, lights flickering, sure. Old wiring, headphones buzzing with static. Michael blamed loose jacks. Then came the night I walked in and the on-air sign was already lit. I froze. Michael, no answer. I stepped into the booth. Nobody. Only the faint echo of a song, not from the current playlist. It was something older, a woman's voice. Slow, warbling, foreign, not Cantonese, not Mandarin, not English. It faded out the moment I entered. I replayed the logs. There was no record of the track. The system hadn't registered any song in that slot. The next night, Jamie came in late, holding 2 coffees and a USB mic. Still hearing things. She teased. I told her about the mystery song. She grinned, always chasing a ghost story. Then she leaned in and said something that genuinely chilled me. "You know someone died in this booth, right?" I stared at her. 1983, she continued. Woman DJ, died live on air, heart failure. The tape of her final broadcast was supposedly lost. Michael, walking in with a cough, muttered, "That's not the weird part." "What is then?" I asked. She was playing a song no one could trace, and it played again, on its own, a month later, then again. Every few years during this shift. Jamie was obsessed now. She stayed all week, digging through station archives and old analog logs. She found something, a log sheet, stained and fragile, listing a broadcast from 1983. The final song on that list was scribbled in messy ink track, unknown air time, 3:03 a.m. remarks, interference, whispers. That night, we decided to stay past 3, just to see 2:58 a.m. Jamie sat on a stool, mic in hand, live on air. Michael was in the booth next door, watching the frequencies. I stood by the console, heartbeat tapping louder than the ticking clock, 3 a.m. Silence. 3:01. Static, 3:02. The on-air sign flickered. 3:03, the track changed itself, no cue. No button pressed, the file showed, no title, no metadata, and then it played, a woman's voice, soft, crying, singing. It was hard to tell, it wasn't Chinese. It wasn't any language we knew. The static behind her began whispering. Jamie looked at me, face drained. "Do you hear it?" she whispered. Then the sound warped, and it said her name, Jamie. The audio twisted like a tape warping in heat. Michael burst in, pale. "The levels are off the charts. It's not coming from our servers." The song played for 2 minutes and 41 seconds. Then silence. The system reset. Our mics were dead. And the logs blank. Jamie left after that night. She told me she'd had nightmares. The voice whispering her name over and over. Michael filed a report, but management dismissed it. Called it a prank or playback error. A week passed. I was back alone, 3 a.m. again. This time, the lights shut off entirely. Only the dim glow of the console remained. Then the whispers began, without the music. I covered my ears. Still heard them. I tried to leave. The door wouldn't open. The monitors flared. Not static, a face flickering, pale eyes. Black lips, screaming without sound. When I finally forced the door open and stumbled out, everything reset, as if nothing happened. Michael found me curled up by the vending machine. He didn't say anything, just helped me up. "I quit," he said. "I think you should too." Jamie called me 2 months later, said she'd found something, an old case file. A woman named Fei Liu, late-night DJ, found dead in the studio. But not from heart failure. The autopsy listed unknown cardiac trauma, like her heart had fractured. There were scribbled notes from her coworkers at the time. Whispers in the booth. Unscheduled songs. She said it was singing to her. One note, half-torn, read, "It only plays when they listen alone." I tried to move on. Took a day job. Stayed away from studios. But sometimes I heard it again, not through speakers, in my head. I started seeing shadows in reflections, lights flickering in my apartment at 3:03 a.m. I thought maybe I was going mad, until I got a package in the mail, no return address inside. A cassette tape written in smudged ink. Play me. I shouldn't have played it. I knew it wasn't safe, but I had to know. I set up an old tape player in my garage, sat alone, headphones on. The moment I pressed play, the static hit. Then the song, same voice. Same warped melody. Then, this time, a new whisper. You listened, now you belong. I screamed and tore the headphones off. Blood was dripping from my ears. The tape had melted. The player was still spinning. It's been 5 years since the broadcast. Jamie disappeared. Michael never answers my calls. The station shut down after a fire. They blamed old wiring. No bodies were found in the wreckage, but the broadcast logs for that night, one line survived. Track: unknown, 3:03 a.m. Remarks: song played itself. I can't sleep anymore. I unplug everything. And yet, sometimes, just before 3 a.m., I still hear the hum, the static, the song trying to find its way back. If you're hearing this, if your speaker starts hissing right now, don't listen, turn it off. Because it only plays for those who listen alone. You ever hear silence so loud it feels like pressure in your skull? Like the room is holding its breath, waiting for something. That's what the studio felt like. I was alone. Or at least I thought I was, working late in this busted old place downtown called Glasswing Studios. The name was ironic. There were no windows, just thick, soundproofed walls, faded foam panels, and a smell that always reminded me of dust and static electricity. It was just supposed to be one more night of mixing down tracks for my solo project. A way to drown out the quiet that had crept in since the band fell apart, since I stopped hearing from Ellie. But something changed that night. It started with the red light, 1:44 a.m. I was mid-session, tweaking a vocal stem for a new track called Tremor. The booth was dead quiet. I'd unplugged everything except the input I was working with. No mics live, no monitoring. That's when I noticed the record light. It flicked on. I froze. The master record toggle was off. I hadn't touched the transport controls. Nothing on the DAW showed active takes. But there it was, glowing dull red like an open wound above the booth door. Okay, weird. I stood slowly and crossed the control room. The air felt heavy, like I was walking underwater. I pushed the intercom to the booth. If someone's in there messing with me, congrats. Creepy as hell. No answer. I opened the booth. Empty, no chairs moved. No cables touched. Mic stands in their place. But when I stepped inside, the reel-to-reel machine in the corner, one I hadn't used in months, began to spin. 1:47 a.m. The reels turned slowly, silently. No whirring. No click of activation. Just motion. I went back to the console, heart thumping, and checked the main board. No signal. No inputs were hot. But the reel-to-reel kept turning. And as it did, the meters on the old analog VU panel twitched, not in rhythm with anything I could hear, but with something. Then came the breathing. It came through the monitors, low at first, like someone just behind me was exhaling near my neck. Long, slow, and pained. I turned, expecting to see someone in the room. Nothing. I killed all output channels. The breathing continued. 2:11 a.m. I couldn't make sense of it. Every logical thread unraveled. There was no way any audio could pass through the console with no live input. I finally hit record on the main do just to catch it. If I could prove it was happening, maybe I wouldn't feel like I was losing it. What I captured still makes my skin crawl. It started with breathing. Then came whispers, inaudible at first, like the air itself was mumbling. But when I boosted the low mids and applied an expander, I heard it. "Rosie, slow down. Don't erase me again." My mouth went dry. Erase? Again. 2:44 a.m. I started searching the studio's archives. Old project folders, reel labels, dusty drawers. I wanted to know if anyone else had reported weird interference. That's when I found the tape. A reel labeled Rosie 2 in faded red ink. My stomach dropped. I threaded the tape onto the machine, palms sweating, and hit play. It was my voice, but not a recording I had ever made. Day 14. I keep hearing it. The breathing. The crying. It always starts when I'm alone. I think the studio remembers me. Remembers something. I'm not sure I ever left. Then, sobbing. Then silence. Then, quietly, don't let it hit record. Once it does, you become part of it. 3:03 a.m. I tried to leave. I packed up my bag, slammed my laptop shut, didn't even eject the interface properly. But the door wouldn't open. The locks had disengaged electronically hours ago, yet the knob wouldn't turn. I yanked it until my palms blistered. Then the record light came on again. 3:09 a.m. this time, I saw it happen. The reels started spinning. The do launched itself, loading an old session I hadn't opened in years. And the mic turned on. Its phantom power kicked in with an audible pop. And in the headphones I hadn't touched, I heard a voice. "You're next." I staggered back, knocking over a stool. My reflection in the booth glass blinked half a second late. 3:30 a.m. I've stopped trying to leave. I'm writing this so someone knows. The studio doesn't just record sound. It records people. It copies their voices, their thoughts, their fear, and it plays them back for the next visitor so it can make new recordings. If you find this, don't press record. I've always believed that sound tells the truth, that somewhere beneath static and silence, buried in corrupted files and decades-old tape hiss, the truth pulses like a heartbeat. My name is Marissa Lane, and I've made a career out of following those heartbeats. I live alone in a cramped Portland apartment, and my podcast, Echo Street, was supposed to be about giving voices back to the voiceless. But I think I've started picking up something that was never meant to be heard. My home studio is a nest of wires and glowing waveforms, foam panels curling at the corners, sound blankets draped like funeral shrouds across the windows. There's always a quiet hum from the tower across the street, a low static that settles in the bones of my building like mold. It's comforting in its consistency, until last month when the hum changed. It started subtly, an off note, a strange tonal shift, almost melodic, like someone had left a child's piano playing in a room I didn't own. Ding, ding, dudding, off-key, slow, and hypnotic. I thought it was my ears. I hadn't been sleeping. Between deadlines, editing, and interviewing people who still shake when they say their dead sister's name, it was bound to happen. But then I heard it in the recordings, not just once, not just faintly. It was in the interviews. The first one I noticed was an old 911 call from a 1996 Portland cold case. A woman named Janie Calloway, murdered in her own apartment. Her voice trembles as she begs for help, but beneath her panic, when I cleaned the audio, I heard it. That same damn melody. Ding, ding, dudding, followed by something worse. A whisper, faint, backwards, modulated. I reversed it, slowed it down. Marissa, my name, my voice. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? Jessica, my producer, already thought I needed a break. The police. They barely tolerate my requests for tape archive access. So I dug deeper. I went to the basement archive of KOTL, the oldest AM station in the city. Dust lay thick over cardboard boxes marked only with numbers. 14,373, 14,373, no names, just dates and real sizes, forgotten by everyone except me. I pulled case after case, cold calls, confessions, public access broadcasts, some on reel, others on cassette, one even on wax cylinder, I kid you not, and every fourth or fifth tape. That melody was there, always the same warped tune, always right before a voice goes missing, and always followed by whispers that sounded like me. My bedroom became a mess of waveform screenshots and waveform overlays. Red string connected dates and names across my corkboard. But what made my stomach twist were the patterns. Identical wave spikes, same background hum. Almost like a signature. That's when the files started vanishing. At first, I thought I misnamed one. Then I watched a folder of 6 hours worth of cleaned interviews blink out while I was watching. No alert, no recovery. Jessica swore she didn't delete them. She didn't even have the passwords. And my backups, static, hissing, the same melody. Playing for 6 hours, I began to hallucinate. I think the figure across the street outside the transmission tower looked like me. Hair the same length, same coat, just standing there, watching my window at 3:12 a.m. Once I watched her raise a hand, then she vanished. I recorded an episode about it. A paranoid, frantic 20-minute ramble I never released. But when I reviewed the raw audio, it was just silence. Even my breathing was gone, only the melody remained. The worst part. The victims all heard it too, when I re-interviewed a surviving caller, Leo Marquette, whose brother vanished in 2004. I played the cleaned version of his call and asked if anything stood out. He went dead pale. "I used to hear that music in my dreams," he whispered, "before he died." "Did you hear it in real life?" He looked at me then. "No, but I heard your voice asking me to follow it." He ended the interview early. I never heard from him again. Then the emails started, anonymous addresses. No subject lines, just audio files. They were always short, 10 to 12 seconds. But they all ended the same way. My name, layered and modulated like a choir of dying radios. Mahari Isa. One file included breathing, not mine. I finally cracked on a Sunday morning at 4:47 a.m. I hadn't slept in 2 days. I was reviewing police tapes from a 1983 cult suicide that had never been solved, a group called the Quiet Choir. Guess what melody was playing faintly in the background? Yeah, that one, that off-key piano again, but this time there were reversed phrases underneath the music. Garbled, chopped. I spent all morning decoding it, slowing it, layering it, and when it finally played clearly, I felt the cold sweat roll down my back like ice. It was me, sobbing, saying, "They're coming, please, I don't want to be next." The timestamp on the waveform. It said it was created 6 months ago. I checked my recording log. I never said those words, never cried like that. But it was my voice. Exactly. Same mic hiss. Same room echo. That's when I saw the waveform pulse, the shape matching 5 other cases, and then I heard the piano in real life behind me. I spun in my chair, knocking over my coffee. Foam panels peeled from the wall behind my monitor, revealing black mold that hadn't been there yesterday, but no piano, just silence, until the screen blinked to life. A new project auto-loaded titled Final Broadcast Lane. WAV, and the file was already at 3:12 a.m., the exact time the woman across the street always appeared. I started recording live. My hands shook as I adjusted the mic. I spoke into the void. If you're hearing this, I think I've uncovered something I wasn't meant to. The melody connects cold cases. The whispers predict new ones, and the voice inside it. I paused. The screen flickered. It's me. Or something that wants to be me. Outside, I heard the tower hum louder than ever. A low, groaning frequency that rattled the window panes. "I think I'm next," I whispered. Then, I heard the melody play through my own headphones. Not in the room. Not in the world in the broadcast. It had hijacked my episode. And in the background, behind the tune, was the sound of my breathing, stopping. That was the last thing I said live. The next morning, thousands of listeners woke up to a new episode of Echo Street, titled The Disappearance of Marissa Lane. It played for 13 minutes. The melody repeats. The waveform is identical to the murder victims. And right at the end, a whisper. "You're next." I first heard the signal 2 days after my dad died. It came through the shortwave radio in the middle of the desert, whispering in his voice, saying things only he and I ever knew. I was parked in the middle of nowhere, eastern Arizona. Just me, the night, the van, and the towers of red rock glowing under a swollen moon. I hadn't heard another human voice in 14 hours. No headlights behind me. No towns for 50 miles. That's why I listened. That's why I answered. My name is Cry, Field Tech, and part-time paranormal blogger, which sounds cooler than it pays. I'd been driving cross-country, documenting obscure radio phenomena for a YouTube channel that maybe 20 people watch regularly. Half of them conspiracy nuts. But this wasn't for the channel. This was just me and grief and static. My dad passed from a stroke 6 days ago. The last voicemail he left was just whined. He always said, "When I'm gone, just listen to the air. I'll be in it." He meant it metaphorically, I thought. My friend Emma, a sound engineer from Flagstaff, and the only person I trusted to call me out when I was spiraling, said I needed a break. No more radio signals. Just sit with the silence for a bit, okay? I didn't listen. Grief is funny like that. It pushes you toward the noise. And sometimes the noise pushes back. I had parked near an abandoned Navajo service station off Highway 191. The place had been gutted long ago. Boards over windows, rusted pumps, the paint peeling from the old sign like it was being erased by time itself. I liked the quiet. No cell service, just moonlight and the desert wind rattling through thorny brush. I tuned the shortwave just past midnight, more habit than purpose, fingers idly skipping frequencies like a rosary. A burst of static, then a voice. Christopher? You there, son? I froze. Dad? More static. Then, clearer this time. You didn't bury me right, Chris. I'm still cold. I stared at the radio. The voice was his. Same slow drawl. Same way he called me son, like he meant it more than my name. The frequency blinked. 11.7 megahertz. I checked the time. 12 a.m. That's when I heard footsteps outside. I killed the radio. Crawled to the back of the van, heart jackhammering. I didn't see anything through the windows, just scrubland and the glowing outline of rock. But I heard it, something circling the vehicle. Bare feet brushing against dry earth. The crunch of gravel shifting like weight was moving just outside the passenger side. Then a knock. Chris. You left your coat, my dad again. Only, my coat was in my lap, and he was dead. Chris, it's cold. Open up. The voice cracked toward the end, like something trying too hard to sound human. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My fingers dug into the metal floor. I waited. 30 seconds, a minute. Then, Chris. A whisper now from behind me, inside the van. I screamed and bolted out the front door barefoot, stumbling into desert thorns. The air was sharp, night cold, carrying something metallic, like blood and ozone. I ran half-blind until I hit the old gas station wall. Slid down behind it, heart wild. That's when I saw her, Emma, standing 50 feet away by the edge of the moonlight. She was barefoot, pale, staring at me. I blinked. Emma, she smiled. You forgot your coat. That was when I knew it wasn't her. I stayed behind the station until dawn. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, shaking, the memory of her voice echoing inside me. At sunrise, she was gone. So was the van. I walked 5 miles before a tourist couple picked me up and dropped me at the sheriff's office in Sanders. I told them a version of the story, left out the ghost voice, said someone stole my vehicle and faked my dad's voice on a speaker. The officer was polite. Said it wasn't the first weird thing out in the desert. Made me sign some report and gave me a ride to the motel. I called Emma. Told her what happened. She didn't laugh. She said, Chris, you weren't in Sanders. You called me last night. You said you were in Window Rock. I never called you. Yes, you did. She paused. You sang Good Night, Irene, the lullaby your dad used to sing. I hung up. I went back out the next day. I had to. I had to see if the signal was real. If something, anything, out there was imitating me. Or him. I borrowed a friend's Jeep and drove past the same route. Near dusk, I found my van, parked under a dead tree like it had never moved. The windshield was cracked, the door ajar. Inside, the shortwave was still on. Same frequency, 11.7 megahertz. No sound now, just a faint ticking. Like claws on metal, I pressed record. That's when I heard it. Emma, Emma, Emma. Over and over. My voice. Only I'd never said her name like that, breathless, crooked, off. Then it changed. Lower, thicker, CHRRS, help me. And then, like a recording skipping, you forgot your coat. I drove back that night but didn't sleep. Emma came over around 2 a.m. She didn't speak. Just sat on the floor, hugging her knees. Then she whispered, I heard you last night. What do you mean? You came to my apartment. You said you missed Dad. I hadn't left the motel. She looked up. Her eyes were rimmed red. You sang the lullaby, but your mouth wasn't moving. We didn't talk again after that. The thing followed us, not the voice, the idea of it. It started small. Random calls with no number ID. The same lullaby through store speakers. My dad's voice in a drive-through speaker. Emma told me it mimicked her sister crying. Then it escalated. I saw a deer walking on its hind legs near the motel, head tilted, mouth hanging open. It stopped and whispered, "Let me in, son." There was no deer when I blinked. I returned to the desert one last time with every mic and camera I owned. This time I brought salt, sage, and a Navajo guide named Jonas, recommended by a friend of a friend. He didn't talk much, just looked at the frequency, then at me and said, "You heard the mimic." "I think so." He shook his head. "You don't think, you know. And now it knows you." He drew a circle of ash, told me to sit inside, said not to leave, no matter what voice I heard. I agreed. He lit sage. The radio turned on by itself, no power, 11.7 megahertz again. This time there was no voice, just breathing. Wet, ragged. Then the sound of claws dragging along metal. Jonas said softly, "Don't answer, don't respond, don't listen too long." But the voice came from all around the desert, and it was me, begging, crying, asking for help. "You said you'd listen, Chris. You said you loved me. You said you wouldn't leave me here." Jonas shouted, "It's lying. It's not yours." I covered my ears. Then it said, in my dad's exact voice, "I never wanted to leave you, son. Don't let it keep me here." I stepped out of the circle. The next part is hard to remember. I saw the thing. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It had my face and my dad's and Emma's, flickering like a broken slideshow. Its limbs cracked backward. Its teeth were too long. Its eyes, empty radio static. Then Jonas threw a vial of something dark at it, and it screamed like metal splitting. Everything went black. I woke up in daylight. Alone, radio shattered, Jonas gone. The circle was still there, burned into the sand. I never saw him again. I live near people now, cities, lights. I sleep with the TV on and never touch shortwave again. I haven't heard the voice in months. But sometimes, at 12 a.m., I hear my dad singing, not from a speaker, from the hallway. Emma moved to Oregon, changed her number. I don't blame her, because this story doesn't end with a monster being defeated. It ends with knowing that the Skinwalker doesn't need to find you. It only needs your voice, and we gave it everything. The first time I heard the Pearl Bryan ballad, it wasn't from Spotify, YouTube, or a dusty folk album. It came from a record player that wasn't plugged in, and something sang along, "I don't know how long I have." She comes when the second verse hits. If you hear that voice, don't sing back. Don't hum. Don't whistle, or she'll know where you are. My friends calls me Jenna. I've worked for a local audio restoration shop just outside Louisville, Kentucky, for the last 6 years. It's mostly old men bringing in warbled Elvis records or their grandpa's military tapes. But I love it. The texture of aged sound, the hiss, the pops, the ghosts in the grooves. I live alone in a rented 2-bedroom house. Quiet, cheap, mostly empty, except for my collection of vintage records and my cat, Marvin. That's how it began, with a free crate of forgotten records. A man had passed away just south of the Ohio River. His son dropped off boxes from the attic. "Keep whatever you want," he said. "Burn the rest." He looked pale. "I don't want any of it back." Among the usual Neil Diamond and Hank Williams, there was one vinyl that stood out, no label, no sleeve. Just etched letters on the center ring. PB 1896, it wasn't listed in any catalog. No artist, no genre. The grooves were faded, almost scratched away, like someone tried to destroy it but failed out of curiosity. I dropped the needle. At first, just faint static. Then a slow, sorrowful hum. A woman's voice, soft and aching, floated through the speakers. Down by the orchard, beneath winter's stone. It didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard, melancholic, fragile. But there was something wrong with it, a faint whisper beneath the music. Not lyrics. Not harmony. Just breathing. I played it again the next day, this time for my best friend Sarah, a school teacher with a passion for horror podcasts and history trivia, and Micah, my ex, who'd recently reconnected with me over a shared love of blues records. He was skeptical about anything paranormal, but he had a high-end turntable I wanted to test it on. We played the track at his place, and as soon as the first verse ended, the lights dimmed. Micah scoffed. "You sure this isn't just bad wiring?" But Sarah whispered, "No. Did you hear it?" "Hear what?" I asked, that humming under her voice. We all had. And worse, the song was different this time. A new lyric appeared that hadn't been there before. "Oh, lover mine, who took my head, I'll sing through time until you're dead." Sarah stayed up all night researching. At 7:41 a.m., she called. Her voice was shaking. "Jenna, it's Pearl Bryan. That's who it's about." I vaguely remembered the name, 1896. A real case. Pregnant woman from Indiana found decapitated near Fort Thomas, Kentucky. Her head was never found. They say her ghost walks, headless, searching for it. Multiple folk ballads were written in the early 1990s, but none were known to survive on vinyl, and none of them matched our recording. Ours had new verses. Ours was still being written. 2 nights later, I played the vinyl alone, headphones on, sitting cross-legged in the dark. I don't know why I kept listening. Maybe the melody was addictive. Maybe the sorrow in her voice was hypnotic. As the second verse started, Marvin, my cat, hissed at the empty hallway. And I heard the creak of the record player arm lifting, all by itself. "And he who danced to my refrain shall feel my breath through walls and rain." Suddenly, the power cut off. Silence. Except I could still hear the song, not through headphones, not through speakers from behind me. A woman's voice, faint, melodic, and full of grief, singing directly into my ear. That was the first night I saw her in the hallway mirror. A figure in a white 80s dress. No head, just a floating jaw, singing the final note, then gone. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Micah told me it was grief hallucinations. But when he took the vinyl home to prove it's nothing, he called me 4 hours later. I heard her, "Jenna." I think she followed me. The call cut. He never answered again. Sarah came over, shaking and pale. Her students said they saw a headless woman standing outside her classroom. She kept dreaming of being buried alive, her mouth stuffed with black roses. We tried burning the vinyl. It didn't melt. We tried recording over it. The needle snapped. We played it backward. The whispers grew louder. They weren't just background noise. They were names, ours, over and over. Each time we played it, a new verse appeared. And with each verse, the haunting got stronger. Doors slammed, mirrors cracked. And in every reflection, I saw her again, closer, no eyes. Just lips, mouthing the next lines. "Oh, Jenna fair, and Sarah sweet, your steps now echo where I weep." We had to go, to where her body was found, Fort Thomas, specifically, a fenced-off trail behind the old orchard near the cemetery. I brought the vinyl. The air there felt thinner, like sound moved slower. At exactly midnight, We played it again using Micah's portable player. As the ballad echoed through the trees, a wind blew against us from all directions. Then we saw her, Pearl, not a ghost, not a hallucination, a presence, coalescing from shadow and sorrow. She pointed toward a gnarled tree. At its roots was a buried box, inside. A decaying head preserved in wax, her head. We buried it properly, played the song one last time at her grave. This time it was complete, no new verses, no whispers, just quiet. Sarah and I cried for her, for ourselves. For a moment it felt like peace. I moved, gave away my turntables, no more records. Sarah took time off. She swore she heard singing through her vents at school, but it faded. I thought it was over, until last night. A package arrived, no return address, inside. A new vinyl, same blank label. Etched in center, PB. 2025. It's not the same song. It's starting again. New voice, new names. I haven't played it yet, but I can feel her. She wants it sung. Pearl doesn't rest forever. Her grief doesn't end. She writes new verses. If you ever find the vinyl, don't drop the needle, because the ballad only ends when it finds its next voice. I used to think that Lavender Town Syndrome was just an internet hoax, a creepypasta cooked up by some edgy forum kids to scare each other. Then I found the cartridge. Then I played it. Now, the melody never stops, not even in sleep. I'm writing this while I still can, before the song reaches the end. My name's Aaron, and I live alone in a cramped apartment in Quezon City, surrounded by empty instant ramen cups and flickering fluorescent lights. A few months ago, I went on a retro game binge, scrolling Shopee listings, hunting rare cartridges from my childhood. I told myself it was nostalgia, but maybe it was something else. Maybe I was trying to rewind life to a time when things weren't so broken. Then one seller caught my eye. No profile picture. 0 reviews. The listing, original Pokemon Green, Japan only, lavender edition. $299, no further description, no return policy. I bought it anyway. It arrived in a plain, unmarked box. Inside was a single Game Boy cartridge, emerald green, but the sticker had faded to a lavender gray. No Pikachu, no Japanese text. Just a single red-eyed sprite, staring up. The back label was blank. No serial. Just a faint, hand-carved word in katakana. I sent it to a friend to translate. He messaged back, it means sound or noise. That night, I loaded new batteries into my old Game Boy and booted it up. The screen flickered. Static danced, then the title appeared. Pocket Monsters, lavender, no intro theme, no Pikachu, just a high-pitched, warbling tone. And then, the town. Not palette, straight to lavender. I wasn't entirely alone during this. I told my childhood friend Daniel, a collector and modder. He came by the next day to check it out, skeptical but curious. He brought his younger sister Cassie, 18 and always glued to her phone. She hated Pokemon. Thought it was grandpa gaming. Daniel hooked the cartridge to his dump tool, but when he tried to read the ROM, the screen flashed black and corrupted his software. Cassie laughed. Maybe the ghost of your Pokemon died in there. But then I noticed her expression shift as the background music played. She winced. That sound, it hurts. I heard it too, not loud, but piercing. Like a mosquito buzz, except inside your head. Daniel chuckled nervously. This some kind of anti-piracy scareware. That night he went home. Cassie left early, unusually quiet. I didn't sleep much. When I did, I dreamed in pixels, flat, colorless corridors, grayscale gravestones, and a melody that looped endlessly. Each time I'd wake with a jolt, heart pounding like I'd been running. I tried turning off the console, removing the batteries, locking it in a drawer, but I could still hear the melody. Cassie messaged me at 2:47 a.m. That sound, it's still here, even when I mute everything. My nose bled when I tried to sleep. Tell Daniel to burn that effing game. The next day, Daniel didn't respond to texts. I called him straight to voicemail. I went to his house. His mother answered, pale and trembling. He locked himself in his room. Hasn't come out since yesterday. I broke in. Daniel was curled up in a corner. His Game Boy lay beside him, still on, still running. He looked at me with bloodshot eyes. "They scream when you turn it off," he whispered. I brought the cartridge to a friend of mine, Ally, a sound engineer. I didn't tell her the whole story, just that I wanted her to analyze the audio. She plugged the audio out into a spectrum visualizer. The frequency looked wrong. There were spikes outside the audible range, strange modulations, in the 18,000 to 20,000 hertz spectrum. She filtered it down, reversed it, slowed it. What came out wasn't music, it was voices. Not language, just fragments. Wailing, breathing, high-pitched weeping. Ally yanked off the headphones. Her ears bled. She looked at me and whispered, "Aaron, that's not from a game." I started hearing it in everything, the hum of the fridge, the whir of the fan, the traffic outside, lavender. Always lavender. I stopped going outside. Cassie vanished, deleted her socials. Her mother filed a missing person report. Daniel was admitted to a psychiatric ward. He spoke only in game commands. Use escape rope. Cannot escape. Cannot escape, I posted on old message boards, hoping to find someone who knew more. One anonymous user messaged me. The lavender cart is real. It was part of an internal audio test in 1996. A dev inserted frequencies designed to stimulate fear and unease, like sonic neuroweapons. It was never meant for public release. The dev died before finishing it, hung himself, but the file kept playing, even without power. I asked who they were. They never replied. Reality broke for me the night my screen stayed on after the Game Boy was off. I saw Lavender Town in my room. Gravestones where my furniture should be, pixel ghosts hovering near my bed. My reflection blinked, but I hadn't. I saw my sprite walk into the Pokemon Tower and disappear. Before Ally blocked me, she left one voicemail. Her voice shook. The sound wave is changing brain patterns. I checked my EEG. It's like it's rewriting thought loops, a melody designed to trap you. If you play it too long, you don't come back. I dug out the Game Boy for one last time. I loaded the save. There were no Pokemon, no character, just the tower, just the top floor. A grave with my real name on it. Aaron listened too long. I turned off the device, and the sound kept playing from inside my ears, like tinnitus, but with rhythm, like a lullaby meant for the dead. I can't eat anymore. I barely sleep. I see Cassie's face in reflections. Daniel's words echo in my dreams, and every night at 3 a.m., I hear the game start again, even when I'm not touching it, even when it's in another room. It hums, it waits, it sings. I know now, the Lavender Town frequency wasn't meant to be heard. It was meant to replace thought. Don't look for it, Don't download fan mods. Don't chase the melody, because it wants listeners, it needs minds, and it's patient. And when you hear the first note, just one high, warbling frequency, you'll know that it's already in.